The Couple on Fire podcast. On tonight's episode, you're going to hear about our story, which is kind of weird. When's that coming up?
Right now.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Couple on Fire podcast. This podcast is for couples, for marriages, and for families within the Christian community. We exist to help break the stigma that happens within the Christian community. We're talking about divorce, we're talking about addiction, and we're talking about so much more. We believe that all this is possible in this life, strictly based on the power of Jesus Christ and his ability to restore us fully. Let's dive in. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome to today's show. I'm here with the always beautiful and highly intelligent Miss Christy. How are you, babe?
Good.
I'm your other host, Josh. I'm the dumb one. I just show up, push buttons.
Don't say that about yourself.
That's what I do. That's what I do. That's what I'm here to do. Just make her look good. That's what I do the best. So, kind of funny, right? So, we met up with some new friends. And with these new friends, their name is Eloy and Stephanie Martinez. We met up with them a couple weeks ago. They happen to live in Michigan. And they were saying that they were going through some of our episodes on our podcast. And they're like, where at in your episodes do you guys have where you told your story? And we sat for a second and we're like, we've never done that. Which is really weird, but...
It is weird, because when I'm like, now that people get on there and they want to go see, like, I want to find out...
Who are these people? What are they about?
How'd they meet? Like, I want to know their story. And it's like...
You can't find it.
We don't have anywhere...
Never done it. I'm like, 200 episodes. We've never
200 episodes, you could piece it all together.
I would hope. I don't even know. Probably. It's a lot of watching. But, so that's what today's episode is going to be. So, Christy and I are going to take today's episode. Won't be too long. So, we're just going to tell... some backstory, right? How we met, why'd we want to get into marriage coaching and starting a podcast, and why do we care about marriages and these things? And that's pretty darn important. I guess this is something we should have shared a long time ago. So,
it's interesting how we met too.
It is interesting. We have a very interesting story. It is interesting.
How we met and then left and then met quick, left, and then met again.
We'll talk about the met quick. There's a funny met quick. So why don't you kick us off? Why don't you start the beginning of the story? Just tell everybody. Yay, I've wanted to hear this. Yay, okay. Well, thank you for saying that. I'm actually going to put that on the screen. Thank you for saying that. Thank you, Renee.
Yeah, that's so funny.
That. We appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of surprised. We didn't even think. So here it is, right? Here's the story.
It's crazy.
Unedited.
Crazy. Stephanie called us out. Good job, Stephanie.
She did call us out. She did. And it's funny because we had to sit there and ponder for a minute. We're like, no, it's episode never. So,
and we consider ourselves well-versed now. We've been doing this for a while.
You would think
this is the 8th season.
I know. You would think that we would have it in there somewhere.
It's like, no, you
right? You don't get it. We're a bunch of donkeys.
Oh,
so thank you, Eloy and Stephanie, for saying something, because we're like, we are doing this and we're going to do it soon. And so, yeah, this is it was probably 3 weeks ago, maybe at this point. I don't know, anyway.
So funny.
So tell everybody the beginning.
So, yeah, I like doing this too because, his perception and my perception even about
is the
things.
exact same. Or it's not.
It is.
It's
so I was 18 and I met what came to be, which I found out later on, was one of Josh's friends. So
old friend.
Yeah, they're not friends anymore. I mean, this was a long time, 30 years ago.
Wow.
Almost.
It's about 30. Well, it's not 30 for me. It's probably 28.
Oh, yeah.
28.
Yeah, that's true. About 28 for you.
Yeah.
I was 18 and I, started talking to this guy. And then, you start talking to somebody, they introduce you to their friends and so on and so forth. And Josh was one of his friends. And I was with him, this guy, on and off, I think, for 3 years. 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah. For 3 years. And during that time, I really didn't like this dude. But the great part about it is that Josh has only had 3 serious relationships. I would say real serious relationships his whole life. So he was with his most serious girlfriend when I met him.
Yeah.
And then they had been together forever. And then they had broke up.
4 years.
Yeah, since I had known him, broke up. And then he started dating his now ex-wife, who obviously was a serious relationship. I mean, they got married. And then there's me. So I knew both girls. I knew the history of that. So, but yeah, I was with that guy on and off for 3 years, and it was one of Josh's friends.
Yeah, so
I didn't like you.
We don't even need to talk about that. So yeah, so it was interesting. So at the time, I was in my early 20s. I would have been 22 at the time when Christy and I met. And first off, I looked at her and I'm like, my friend, like, how could a guy like my friend actually get a girl this amazingly awesome? Like, that's the truth. Absolutely gorgeous, right? She had a large chip on her shoulder, very aggressive, which I liked. Okay, I like all that. And she knows what she wants. So I thought they were a very poor match, right? And so I would always kind of pick on them about it. But I was not really with anybody at the time. I was kind of off and on and single and not single and all these things. And so, Kristen and I always had this crazy attraction to each other. We knew it. Even though she didn't like me, she had reasons to not like me at the time. But there was still like this, had a lot of tension in between us, if you know what I mean. And we had this attraction amongst us, but we were very respectful of each other as well. So we, I'm like, this is my friend, this is his girlfriend. We don't go there, right? I mean, but he was not just a friend of mine. He was my best friend at the time. And we roomed together. We were shared a house together. We were living together. And of course, he was gone at work one day and Christy comes out of the shower and has just
we don't need to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, we are though.
Does not have anything to do with us meeting.
It kind of does. And so I'm like, okay, there is some tension between us, but we never acted on any of that type of things, right? We never did. We were very respectful of that. But as time goes on, I did end up dating another girl and then end up becoming serious. We ended up getting married. But in that meantime, you and Ed had broken up. This, your ex-boyfriend of yours, and you kind of had went your way and I had went a different way.
Yeah. So we, his friend and I ended up breaking up, and over the next couple months I had met my now ex-husband. So he ended up getting married to his now ex-wife, which I had known her.
Yep.
You guys had started dating before him and I had broken up, so I knew who she was. You guys got married very quickly. So your total, your total of like getting to meet her all the way to your divorce total was like 5 years.
5 years total. Yep.
And then I left. I met my now ex-husband, and him and I got married very quickly. I mean, within like a year, we met. Not even a year later, 11 months, I think we were married. And I was married for that time for 10 years. During that time, I had 2 kids. This is how we became a blended family. I had 2 kids, and we had separated though after the birth of my second son. Before we got officially divorced, we had separated for like 6 months, around 2006, I would say.
Yeah.
And I was out, him and his ex-wife were divorced, and I was out partying, and him and I ran into each other, and we kind of sat and were talking a little bit then, like about, we wish we would have been together type of thing. We both, obviously, like we've shared before, we're both recovering alcoholics. Well, both of us were still alcoholics at this time.
Yes, active.
So we, did things that you shouldn't do if you're a Christian. Okay, and you're not married.
Right.
Okay, we're not promoting that. We weren't living our lives that way. And then I ended up deciding to go back and give my marriage, because we were just separated, a second chance. So then I went back to my ex-husband, and then him and I ended up getting divorced, like filing for the divorce in 2010. And it was final in 2011.
All right. So pause.
Yeah, pause.
Pause. Okay. So that was, you guys were together for a total of 10 years. Or together for 11, but married for 10.
Yeah.
Right? So my ex-wife and I got together. Well, my ex-wife at the time had a little girl that was 2 years old. Her name was Jordan. Her dad really didn't come around. She didn't have a relationship with her dad. So I kind of took on this quote unquote parenting dad role, even though I wasn't prepared to do that. And then when I was 26 years old, so after being together we were married at the time. I think we were married for about a year. I never thought I could have kids. So when I was 15 years old, I was in a hunting accident and I got shot with a 30-06. It was a severe accident.
He got shot close to his no-no place.
Right. It was a no-no, almost was a no-go. So I found, they told me I would, because of the damage and stuff, I probably could never have children. So I just never thought I could. And then I decided.
He still has it.
Still has what?
It's not gone.
The kid?
No.
Oh, so I decided to go and get checked to make sure that I could have children, and I could. And so my then wife really wanted to have a child, and I only wanted to have a child if I could have a boy. That's how I felt about it at the time, because I only had sisters growing up, and my dad worked all the time, so it was just me. It's the only boy. And God blessed me with a son, but I also blessed me with a little girl that wasn't mine. And so we were together for 5 years, and there was a lot of drinking, there was drugs on her behalf that happened on, a lot of infidelity on both behalves, a ton of it. And so, decided just to separate that marriage, and we did. And I decided that I wasn't going to just take my son away from this marriage. Like, my daughter needed someone to help raise her too, and I wasn't about to just leave her behind. So my daughter came along, and I, to future, she's grown and has a baby and married and all these things, but we've always just raised her as my own.
Yeah.
Like, she's my kid. So I have 2 kids in the eyes of way that we look at it, right? So I have my son, and then I have my daughter, Jordan.
So, pause.
Yep, I paused.
What is weird is where my ex-husband and I lived. We lived in Burton. We lived very close to where his parents have always lived.
My parents live in Burton. Yep.
Yeah, for as long as I've known him. Back when I met him when I was 18, his parents still live in the same house, right? And so there is a Meijer there. It used to be more of a affluent area. There used to be a Target and a Farmer Jack and like Blockbuster. I mean, all them things have went away now. But back in the day, there was a Target. All of that stuff was over there. And I was constantly running into his mom. Like, I was going to a Target, going to Blockbuster, going to Meijer. I was constantly running into his mom. And his mom would always be like, I wish you and Josh would have ended up together. And I'm like, I'm married too, type of thing. But we always talked, and I'm like, yeah, I always liked your son, but he was a ladies' man and all these things. And she knows all about her son. So
my mom and I were really close.
Yeah, they're very close.
Yeah.
She knows about all of his stuff. So I wasn't like talking bad about him. I could talk to her about it because she knows it all, right? And so when I finally, it's awesome. When I finally, my ex-husband and I did get divorced. I was out and about with my kids. They were very young at the time, and they were like 8 and 6 or 7 and 5 or something like that. I ran into her at Target and told her I was getting a divorce, and she called him and let him know that I was getting a divorce.
Yeah.
And she let me know that she let him know. And I wasn't supposed to tell him.
She came out into the car and called me, and then went back into the store to find her that she talked to me.
Yeah, and I wasn't supposed to tell him that ever. But I did.
You told me pretty quick, though.
I did. And so I had reached out to him, and I was still drinking, and asked him if he would consider dating me, like going on a date just to see. And we had history, we'd known each other and lost contact and all this stuff for a while. So we started just going out on a couple dates, like not introducing each other to the kids or the family or anything like that. It was just kind of like, hey, let's talk, let's get together when you don't have your kids, I don't have my kids, just to see how this can work out.
Just test the waters.
Yeah.
Just see how it is. Yeah. And so, she did, drinking one night, she reached out to me on Facebook. And at that time, something she didn't know about me.
You don't need to tell all my stuff.
That's what we're doing right now. We're telling the stuff.
Do you want me to tell your stuff?
We're telling all of her stuff on the Today Show. So she reached out to me and asked me something she didn't know about me at the time, though. At that point, I was a little over a year sober. I had quit drinking. I was 33. So I was about this time, I was a little over 34 years old at the time, and I had quit drinking. And I didn't know that she had a drinking problem. I didn't know anything about you at that point when it came to regards to that. It had been years.
30?
You'd have been 30. Yep.
Because I was 31 when I quit.
Yeah, you were 30. And so we started kind of talking, hanging out and stuff, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, she still kind of parties, and she still kind of does these things. So
but he didn't tell me he was a recovering alcoholic.
I did not. I just said I didn't drink, and that's two very different things.
It is two different things. Y'all know.
I was really insecure, though, about being sober, right? I wasn't confident in my sobriety. I just knew I couldn't drink anymore. And so I didn't embrace my sobriety yet. I was very insecure about that. So I just told her that I didn't drink. So I still started going to these bars and stuff with her, and I was trying not to drink. And that got really out of hand. I mean, we went one night to a pool hall. You had to some work thing. Because
the guy was leaving.
And they went. And I found myself so close to going back to drinking that it was ridiculous. I ended up buying like 12 or 15 O'Doul beers that night. And that's a lot of non-alcoholic beer to waste your money on just to go to the bathroom a lot. And I really felt like, okay, this is really compromising it. And so one day I decided to have a conversation with her about stopping drinking. Like, I can't really do this anymore. And she had already told me, like, I've already made the decision to quit drinking. And I'm like, well, you can't quit for me. And she's like, I wouldn't, which was really kind of funny part of the story. I really remember that, because if you know anything about Christy is very headstrong. She knows. When she knows, and she doesn't do stuff to please other people, which is something I love about her. And she really made a commitment, and I didn't know if I could trust in that commitment, but I was in a place then where I'm like, okay, if this is what you're telling me you're going to do, I really care about her. I really feel like this is the person God wants me to be with. And if that's the case, then this is going to work out one way or the other. And, what's the thing that we always say?
That I led you to church and you led me to sobriety.
Yeah. And I think that's so true.
Yeah, because when I decided to quit drinking, I was like, I'm not going to quit going to church type of thing. But what I find is so hilarious, it's not hilarious, but I find like when God is moving in your life, God will continue to move for years. And him and I have talked about how, like when I didn't know this, he's told me this, when him and I first started talking officially, like, I was getting a divorce and all this stuff. And we started talking, he was like, I really felt like for the first time in my life, like you were I didn't want to change you. I didn't, even if you were drinking, like I just wanted to be with you. I felt like you were the person that I was meant to be with. And it was the same thing for the first time for me. I really felt like, I didn't want to lose this person. Like, and I had never felt that way about anybody before. And through the whole time of him and I first getting together, not way back in the day, but this time, like coming together and actually talking about having a relationship and doing all these things, it's like we were drawn together like magnets. And our relationship and our family has been very hard. We've went through some very, very hard things. This episode is supposed to be to talk about how we met and became a family, so we can continue to talk about that and like get married and all these things. But Josh and I feel like God has really been the saving grace in our marriage, because him and I did all the things wrong in the beginning that we don't condone or encourage anyone to do. So, I was drinking. He was a year and a half sober. I was still actively drinking. And then neither one of us were living our life as Christ followers. We really hadn't submitted over to God. We moved in together, out of wedlock, and we tried to microwave our kids together.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to talk about that before you start jumping ahead of any of that.
Okay.
Because I really think that's a good story.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I was getting to. I don't know what I'm supposed to say then.
No, I want to talk about how we really tried to. We thought, okay, great, this is going to work then, right? You're going to sober up, and then all these things are going to happen, and okay, let's move in together, let's make all this stuff happen, and we're going to we didn't even think twice about whether it was good for our children or not. We didn't even think about that.
So we have a lot of regrets about that.
Yeah, we didn't. We were like, if it's good for us, it's got to be good for them,
right?
And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes in blended families is we do that, and we think our kids are resilient. They're fine. This is a good situation for us, so it's going to be a good situation for them.
And we think we know it all. Like my dad was married 5 times, and my mom was remarried. I had a stepdad growing up. They're divorced now. She's on her 3rd marriage. But I really was like, kids are resilient, and I turned out fine. I mean, look at me.
Right,
awesome.
right.
And it's going to be good. And, I did sit down. Thank God I journaled. So I sat down and journaled some of my things that I did. So I went back in time and read I sat down with the kids tonight and talked to them about moving in with Josh and things like that. So I do know that the conversations happened, but the kids were so young. Like mine were 8 and 6 when I moved in with him. Graydon was just about to turn 7. We had his 7th birthday right after we moved in together. Yeah. His birthday's in January.
Yep.
And we tried to microwave our family. We did. And it was a lot of hostility at first with the kids.
Honestly. Well, with one kid.
All of them, really. I mean, Jordan was she was used to being the only female of the house. She didn't take very kindly me moving in because she was used to being kind of like a motherly figure. Jordan's always been grown for her age,
She had to be.
Yeah. And so she wasn't used to another motherly figure. She was started taking a lot of flack from her mom and her grandma. all of that stuff. But blending our family was any family is hard, but we don't condone the way that we did it. Because then we even went through times where I quit drinking. We really started going to church, really starting putting God at the center. And then I started getting heavily convicted that we should be married. We should not be living together and having premarital sex and doing all of those things. And he didn't know if he wanted to get married again. He just was
I knew that I didn't want to get married at the time.
Yeah.
I was sold on, no, this is not worked out in the past. I'm not doing it again.
Right.
You know, I've seen extremely unhappy marriages, and I know that mine crashed. So it's like, what is the point of doing it? And Christy grew up in church, right? And kind of fell away from the church as she got older. I wasn't raised in church, right? So I knew about God. I knew about that, but I didn't understand what it meant to be a follower or a believer in Jesus, like truly a believer and follower of Jesus. And so once we started doing that, I wasn't getting convicted of all of these things I shouldn't be doing. I was too new of a Christian about, so this stuff didn't bug me. It didn't bug me. And it got so bad where she's just like really started wanting to have the conversation about like, maybe I need to move out. Like, if we're not getting married, maybe I just need to move out. Like, a song would come on the radio and I talk about marriage and she'd be like, turn it off. And at first I'm like, oh, she's just trying to force me into something. And I really had to take some time because it did take a while.
It did.
I had to take some time and I had to make some serious decisions like, okay, number one, do I want to lose this woman? Because if she moves out, I'm pretty sure that's going to be close to the end, right? I mean, there's nothing good comes from that. And number two, like, okay, what do I want out of this, And I really had to dive into and say, okay, if this is something that, and she spelled it out to me. She's like, look, this is not right. We should not be living like this as Christians. We should not be doing these things. And I had to look deeper into that for my own understanding. And once I did that, I felt some peace about it. And I said, okay, you know what? She doesn't know it, but, I'm going to set up this huge, proposal and I'm going to make it really special because these things are important. And, and from there, we got engaged and soon after we got married. And from there, I really feel like things started getting really rough because I decided I was going to go back to school, going to nursing school at the time. And that was extremely heavy. And you were trying to work a full-time job while I was trying to be a stay-at-home dad and help the kids. And that's kind of where like this whole chore chart thing that we talk about on our podcast before was super helpful.
Yeah,
it really was.
It was. I think that what's different about our story about how we met is that we met years beforehand and we lost touch. We weren't even together, right? We weren't together back then. We were dating other people. We lost touch, but I feel like me running into your mom all the time or like you thinking about me all the time. And it's really weird because his ex-wife was like, when they got divorced, was like, if you ever get remarried again, you can marry anybody, but don't marry Crystalline, right? Yeah. And it's like...
She's not like you.
Right. But it's so weird because him and I didn't really even have a history, right? It's not like we were friends and hanging out and all this stuff. So it's like God knew that we were going to be together.
Sure.
People knew in our lives that we were going to be together. And when we finally got together, the story is just so crazy about how everything aligned and everything worked out, even hard, even though things were hard, and we tried to microwave our family, that when we sat down and really started saying, okay, we're in this for the long haul. What are some of the things that we have to do? When we moved in together very quickly, we've actually grown together with God because we've been together, married now for 10 and together for almost 13. We really have to put God in the center of all these things that we've done. So people want to hear about the story that we met. Well, we met actually like years and years and years ago, but I always joke around that I was like a groupie. Like I'm Josh's groupie, right? Like he was always a guy that I like pined over and thought about and like he was this unattainable, like famous person, type of thing. So when him and I first started going on dates together, I couldn't even look him in the eye. Like he'd be sitting across from me in the booth and I'd just be like looking down and then I'd look up and be like, like my face would get like all red and stuff because he just gave me like the butterflies in my stomach and all of these things. And I just feel like so many things were stacked against us from the beginning, stacked against our relationship. I feel like Satan was really fighting against us. Our exes were fighting against us, but I also feel like we made a lot of wrong decisions too and set us up for hard times that we had to work through together. And we've been through so much in the 13 years since then. I mean, health issues and financial issues and automobile accidents. And I don't know why I said automobile, car accidents, just things like that. And our story of getting together, I mean, I don't even know how much more detail we would want to get into about as far as how we met and then how we ended up getting married. I mean, I don't, because you did an awesome proposal. He did an awesome proposal. And I would encourage any couple on here, if you haven't proposed, if you guys are thinking about a proposal, Josh, this is for the ladies, because I know that you'll appreciate this. So Josh, it was a Tuesday. Okay. And Josh was very concerned about what time I was going to be home from work. And to me, that wasn't anything new because he really wanted to make sure he timed when I walked in the door to the time dinner was ready. And to me, that wasn't anything unusual because he had told me he invited his parents over for dinner. He's like, when have we ever invited my parents over for dinner? I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. We never have. And I
still never have, just so we're clear.
I'm like, that is so rude of us, So he's like, I invited them over for dinner. And I'm like, okay. Well, something happened at my job where I was working at kind of a rinky-dink company where your checks bounce, right? So
your paycheck.
And I was the sole provider for the family, and I already wasn't making that much money. And so I come back to the office because I had a company car. I had to drop it back off at the office, get my own car, drive home. They're like, hey, your check bounced. We need to cut you a new one right now. And I called him and I'm like, hey, and he's like, when are you going to be there? I'm like, I have to wait for them to cut this new check because our check bounced. Well, he's like, okay. And then 20 minutes passed or whatever. And I called him and I'm like, hey, I'm still waiting here. He's like, why don't you just come? Like, just come home. And I kind of started thinking then, I'm like, okay, we're poor. And I know how stressed he is about money all the time. For him to tell me to leave my check, like what is going on, and have to, because it's Friday. I'm not going to get it till Monday, all these things. But I'm like, Josh. And then I really talked myself out of it. I'm like, no, he's really a freak about dinner and having it ready. Doesn't want it to be cold.
My
parents. Yeah, all the things. So I talked myself out of it. And so then on the way home, I'm like, man, I wonder. And I'm like, don't you even do that. We have been fighting about it for so long. And if you get there and his parents are there, and you're doing the dinner, you're just going to be mad and upset and have all these things. So I talked myself out of it. And then I get there and I convinced myself he wasn't, right? So we get there, we're living in an apartment at the time. I walk in and on the outside of our apartment door, he had Drew made up this sign, put a ribbon, hung it on the outside of the door. And it said, Les Groceries Bistro. So his last name is Groce, Groce. And then my last name and my boys' last name is Reese, but it's spelled Ries. So if you put them together, it spells groceries. So a lot of people back in the day called us the groceries, right? Because that's what it's spelled. It's kind of like the Brady Bunch, but cooler. Groceries. And so he put like Groceries Bistro on it. I walk in and the whole front room had been transformed and moved around to where the dining room table's out. All the couches and everything have been moved to the sides. The dining room table's in the middle of the room, the living room, with a candlelight dinner tablecloth. And they moved this little wicker stand that we had to right in front of the door with a little lamp with a sign-in book. And Jordan was dressed up like a hostess to check me in, right?
Yeah.
And so I come in and I'm like, whoa, type of thing. All the lights are out. There's candles. There's a little lamp. And in the book, there was like the names written that had checked in were like Marilyn Monroe, type of thing. And Jordan's there and she checked me in. She seats me. And then the boys start coming out. Mind you, the boys are little. I mean, they're like 11, 10, and 8 or, things like that. Yeah. And he had taken white T-shirts and painted on the white T-shirts bow ties with like
tuxedo T-shirt.
Yeah. And then he cut up little white shirts and sewed white cufflinks on their wrists with little black buttons in them. And I'd have to. We should have had
super cute.
We should have had the picture prepared so he could have shared it. But And each of them took turns serving me. Like one brought me bread, one
drinks.
Yeah, water.
Drink.
Yeah, things like that. Took my order, things like that. And it was just so cute. And
they had the whole family involved.
He had the whole family involved. And his mom was there secretly. I didn't know. She was taking pictures. And he proposed to me that night, but it was like such a memorable night, and he was secretly recording it, but he deleted it, so we can never enjoy it or watch it again.
We can never tell the story without her telling that. I had an older computer at the time, and I recorded it and saved it on there, and then I forgot, and then I formatted the hard drive to get rid of it anyway.
Yeah, but it was, I mean, obviously I remember a lot of the details of the night because it was very, very special. Yeah. To me, he went out. So, I mean, he created a menu and actually put it in a like plastic cover thing that you would put like a school project. Style, yeah. And you can open it up, and it had like the appetizer and like with prices and everything on it.
And I made the boys like suggest something because I only made one thing. Like she couldn't order anything else on there. Right? There was options, but they were like, "Can I suggest? You get this." You know?
Yeah. So it was such a cute night, and it was just a very memorable proposal, and it meant a lot. It was super special, and yeah,
it was nice. I was able to get all the boys involved in it though. But that was when I came to terms like, okay, I definitely want to spend the rest of my life with this woman. And if that means that, I need to get married to do so.
Thank God, because I would have to kill him.
then do so, right? And it was, I was 100% in at that point anyway. So I was never not in, but I mean, committed to marriage and committed to the things that mattered. And as time grew, we grew. And that meant that as we grew, things got harder. My son and daughter's mom is not a friendly human. She's not easy to deal with. She's been really rotten to Christy, and the old Christy would not have put up with that. She would have just beaten her to a pulp. And so we've had to work through a lot of those things over the years, and not getting along. We talk about high conflict exes. She's a very toxic person, and it was really, really hard.
But just on top of that, Josh and I's parenting styles were extremely different.
Very different.
And we had to work through that. And our rules for the kids were different. And then, yeah, she worked with me at Helping Hand.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I was, man, I still am, but it was very, very hard. There was a lot of things that were working against us after this, including ourselves, the hard things that we created for ourselves.
Yeah. The church that we started in, Christy was like, to her grandma, she's like, her grandma said, well, you need to go to the church. I really want to start going to church, and Josh doesn't really want to. And she's like, well, you need to go to church wherever he wants to go. Because she wanted to go to her grandparents because I'm the man. So Christy said something to me, and I said, well, the only church I'm comfortable even going to is one that my kids go to. And the ones that my kids go to was the one that my ex-in-law and all of their family went to. Now, my ex-wife doesn't go to church, never has, so I didn't have to worry about her being there, but my ex-mother-in-law and everybody else was there. And I got along with her. And so Christy agreed to do that, and humbly she did.
Different denomination, so it was hard.
Yeah, it was a different denomination, what you grew up in. And so all of these things, and then we're trying to grow in this church, and she's, humbly doing it, which is amazing. I don't realize at the time she really is she knows the importance of faith, and she knows the importance of growing in faith. And so she's willing to do this so her husband can grow in faith. And I just think that as a leadership thing in our household, that was really powerful. It enabled me to do the things that I needed to do to get stronger in my faith so I could be the leading man that she needed. But, and then my ex-mother-in-law really started to get upset because my ex-in-law's family really started to embrace Christy as their mother, and that became a real big problem. So we had to move churches. And so, we had to find a new church and take our kids into a new church and try to do all of that over the years. And so we've fought a lot of battles, but that's why, I feel like we've come ahead though. We've came out ahead on all of this. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's why this story is really what's designed us really to be servants to other people that struggle in these ways, in marriage and in blended families. I feel like God has really brought us through a lot, not just to keep it for ourselves, but, to give to other people.
Yeah. I mean,
I believe that.
Started going to church. We had to go to a different denomination than what I was used to. Not that it was a huge difference. I'm not talking like the difference between a Baptist and a Catholic, right? No. It's a similar denomination, just a little different. And we had things working against us in the form of not only are we a blended family, not only were I an active alcoholic, he was a recovering alcoholic. That is a no-no. Like if you are a recovering person, you do not get in a relationship with someone that's not. That's a no-no. Yeah. Then, I was a Christian. He wasn't a Christian, but we moved in together outside of wedlock, which I knew was a no-no. We moved in together very fast. We tried to microwave our family. And then on top of that, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, we were, doing the boogie woogie, and that's against everything that our faith tells us.
Oh, no, but he's a stay-at-home dad and I'm a working mom. So, especially in the Christian world, like it's designed to talk about either both working parents or the man supports as far as the financially and the woman stays home. And so like his dad being old school really didn't understand that.
He doesn't agree with that.
And my mom definitely didn't agree with it, that he was the stay-at-home dad. And then you're talking about a blended family. So he's staying home with his kids and my kids. And I'm recently going through a divorce. So yeah, my ex-husband wasn't too happy about that. So we had so many things looking back on this that were stacked against us. Our exes were against it. Our exes talked bad about us. They talked bad about us to the kids, all these things. And you really just have to stay strong. Like Josh and I are huge proponents to not get divorced, right? Especially if you're Christian and you are putting God at the center. Marriage is hard and you both have to be all in and committed and work through all these things, because we had mountains in front of us. But both of that, him and I had already had failed marriages, and we both had agreed that, hey, you're my person, and we are going to have the tough conversations, and we're going to sit down and have hours and hours and hours of talks if we need to, but we're going to work through it. And sometimes he was the one saying that to me, and sometimes it's been me saying that to him. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not always like we're both like, yep, we're going to do it. But we had guidelines in the beginning that we said that we weren't going to do. So we're not going to call each other names. We're not going to ever talk about divorce. We're not going to bring it up. It's what are we going to do to get through this? What do we need to do to get through this? What compromises do we both need to make? Things like that. Yeah. So it's been a long journey. I mean, 18, I'm going to be 45 very soon. So 18 was a long time ago, and thinking back on meeting you at that time, it's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
I know it was that long ago. But we've really, really, really had to work at it. We've had everything and everyone against our marriage and against the way that we do things and run our family.
Yeah,
for a long time.
We've never had co-parenting, where a lot of people are like, "Oh, we have great co-parenting with our other parents." We've had everything the opposite of all of those things. We really wanted our children highly involved in church. We really pressed that as hard as we could, but the other sides were really pressing against it. We never had any unity in those things.
So our kids don't go to church.
They don't go to church. They're not involved in church, and so there's a lot of things that were really pushed against us. But I have to say, first marriages, divorce rates around the 50% mark. Second marriages, the chances are about 75% of fail rates, So we talked early on and said, look, like Christy said, there is no decision whether this is or is not going to work. It's going to work. People aren't proud of their divorces, even though the world may think that they are, because it's failure no matter what.
Yeah.
It's failure no matter what. You may think you're getting rid of the problem, but you're part of the problem always. And so we both took on the notion, like, what can we do individually to make this better? Like, what can we do? And I feel like us taking that on of understanding our individual personal growth, not only with ourselves, but with the Lord, and then how we can apply that together, has been a huge proponent. And we learned that really through the 12 steps, through recovery. You talk about it all the time. And I think this process of us learning and growing is something that we never want to stop doing. And by doing that, it's like, okay, how can we give this away? We, help run Celebrate Recovery. And, so we are servants at the highest level we really want to be. And I think that story God's been building in us, he keeps building, wants to build through us.
Yeah. And one thing I didn't talk about, though, to reverse a little bit. So when Josh and I got together the last time, right, this time. The final time. It's the final countdown. Third time's the charm. Jordan was 14. That's his daughter. And his son was 9, little Josh, we call him. He's big Josh. And then my oldest, Garrett, and then my youngest, Graydon. So my oldest was 8, and then my youngest was 6, but just weeks before turning 7. And now Jordan's going to be 27 next month. I mean, his son's going to be, Josh is going to be 22. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking we're in November already. Jordan's going to be 27 in December. Yeah. Little Josh is going to be 22 in November. And then Garrett is going to be 22 next April. And then Graydon's actually going to be 20 in January. Yeah. So it's our kids have went through a lot. We've blended a lot. We went through a lot of things. Jordan is, but what we can tell you now is our kids are extremely close. They love each other. The regret that we have is they're not involved in church. They're not really like living their life for the Lord like we would like to see. But Josh and I do know there's redemption stories because him and I didn't in our 20s either. Yeah, you know. True. So we're believing that God will bring them back. But the silver lining of this is our kids are extremely close. They love one another. They talk to one another. They were there for one another. So it's a huge success story about that.
The kids' togetherness has been one of the greatest stories of our blending. It really is. And it's not anything we even did, I feel. Like, it's the weirdest thing. We moved into the house that we're currently in. There was a finished basement, and we just put the 2 older boys downstairs. And then Graydon, which is Christy's youngest, the youngest boy of all, and then Jordan were upstairs. But I feel like those 2 boys didn't want to share a room down there, but they didn't have a choice. Like, we had a 3-bedroom house. The 3 bedrooms were occupied. There's a finished basement. Figure it out. And in doing that over the years, and we didn't even know what was happening. Didn't even know what was happening. The 2 boys started becoming really close. And then one day they were just like called each other best friends, and we about fell out of our chairs. We didn't even know that. We didn't even realize it was happening. And then Jordan being the glue of like
she's 6 years older. Yeah, and she's motherly, like I said.
She is the super like glue that holds these kids together as a sibling unit. And it's been absolutely incredible to watch. Yeah,
they all adore her.
They do. So, they all look up to her. They all want to talk to her. They all want to share their problems with her. And as much as we would want that to be us at all the times, we're just glad that there's somebody within the unit. It's weird because we've asked that question. I'm like, why? Like, why isn't it us? And they're like, they don't want to disappoint us. You know? I don't feel like we've set the standard that high, but we set standards on ourselves, and that's probably poured over into our children.
Which is not always a good thing.
Apparently. So that's a little bit of our story, you know, and
I hope that covers everything.
I don't know. I don't think it does, but it's the most we could do. It's been like 40 minutes.
Oh.
Like we could spend another probably hour and 40 filling in all the gaps and stuff. But
if you have questions, if you feel like there's gaps in the story, if you'd like to know more about the baggage that I brought into the relationship, or the baggage, or about Josh's shot story, he got shot. You know, he mentioned that. If you're like, whoa, what? Like, if you want to hear more about that, anything, just let us know.
Yeah, and how we were able to navigate some of the kids' stuff, you know,
and get involved in church and really put God at the center.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a whole lot. I'm actually on staff at the church that we attend now. I've been on staff for almost 7 years now, and so there's a lot of things that's happened in the meantime.
There's a lot of meat.
There is, and there's just not enough time to cover everything. But yeah, God has been good. The key things, I think, for me personally, is that I just stayed faithful of what God has really wanted out of me and what He's expected of me as a husband and as a father and as a servant of Him. You know, that's something I've really kept forth. And I've understood that I can't control the outcomes of everything. And there is things that I have to just let God take care of. And and I have the best wife. And I'm really sorry that there is nobody else that can have a wife as good as her, but I do have her because she understands. She knows what it means to be valued, and when she understands what it means to be valued, she wants to give me all of her value, and I appreciate that more than you know.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, beat that.
I can't beat that.
No.
So my takeaways of our story and everything is putting God at the center of it, and what I'm learning right now is to, I have a lot of regret for the things that we did when we first got together, about myself, you know, about how we tried to microwave the kids. And Josh, what we didn't talk about is, you know, we mentioned different parenting styles, but Josh and his kids were extremely close when it came to talking to one another. Like his kids were, because he had a different parenting style than mine, they were more like roommates in the house, but they all respected each other and they all sat down and had like an equal voice. And my kids and I were very close. We did everything together, but I feel like my kids kind of didn't understand everything that was going on. Graydon has said that to us recently about like, even when we were getting married, he's like, I don't really understand what was going on. And Garrett had a lot of shifting to do and learning for himself based on his role in the house, oldest boy, not oldest boy, all these things. And I don't feel like I was attentive to that enough. So what I'm learning now is what's done is done and giving it to God and to not live in the regret. So if I go back through, and I have to force myself sometimes to read my journal or go back through and look at our old, because I picture album everything on Facebook. Okay. There's an album for every single season, family function.
Yeah, if we're friends and you want to go through our album, you'll just know the story. Like there's a picture
everything.
For everything.
So I go back through and I remind, like, we did a lot of fun stuff with our kids, and we tried very, very hard, having devotional nights and family fun nights. And I have to remind myself of all the good that we did, because I'll just sit and be like, okay, I should have done this. I should have done this. And looking back, because our kids aren't really involved in church and things like that, I will beat myself up. And I'm learning how not to do that, because ultimately we did good, and
I think so.
Our kids are good. And,
I give us a B.
Yeah, B+.
Ooh, man, I thought you'd be harder on us. Yes, I got a plus. There's always a plus. So, Carrie says, I can relate a lot to the high conflict ex and how they badmouth you to the kids. I can relate a lot to what you are saying.
My ex did, and his ex did.
Both of them did. Rob says, amazing story, guys. Thank you, Rob and Carrie. We're actually looking forward to seeing you guys at our event, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Renee says, thank you. This is an awesome story. Thank you, Renee. That's super kind of you. Your story, God's glory. That's right. We actually have shirts for our church that says that. Yeah.
We do. Yeah, I love those.
And it is. It's God's glory. And that's what we want to live out our life doing. Just, we feel like many people are quiet about the things. I mean, it's easy to sit on the things that God does for our lives, but he doesn't want it to just stop at us. He wants it to go through us. And so.
Well, and if you look back and they're like, I have no idea how Josh and I made it. Like if you were, and I'm sure a lot of you are like that, right? Like I look back on everything, like how we were set up to get together, the hurdles that we've had to face and still recently had to overcome and things like that. And there's like, it doesn't make sense. It's God.
I feel like we thrive through it too, which is weird.
It's God. God. Like there's no explanation. There's no like actual like worldly thing that you can say like for sure. Yeah, this is why. And like, no, we can't make sense of it. So it's for sure God.
It is. So with that being said, we have our Perfectly Blended event coming up November 4th, 2023. Whenever you're listening to this, if it's past that, then I'm really sorry. You
missed it.
You can't come this year. So we do want to let you know it's something that we have Jay and Laura LaFoon. If you don't know who they are, look them up. You just Google Jay and Laura LaFoon. Literally, they'll come up.
You'll want to come just for them.
Yeah, they're hilarious. They're fun. They do Celebrate Your Marriage on Mackinac Island. They do it twice a year.
And they call themselves edutainers, which I flippin' love it.
And they are that, though.
Because they're entertainers and educators.
They educate through entertaining, and it's actually really awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
They're great people. We're really good friends with them. We're actually going to go see them this Friday at their home. But they're amazing people. But the goal of coming this year, really honestly, is really to get other couples connected with each other. There's not enough of this. As believers in Christ and knowing that we have blended families or marital issues, we're not hand raisers by nature. So come, be part of it. We have a lot going on during this event. We're going to feed you. We're going to give you snacks. We're going to treat you right like we are. But we have breakout groups. We have an interactive session that we're going to do. And it's going to be fun. We have music. We have lots of great stuff. So we're really encouraging you to do that. What did Carrie say? I've heard it called parallel parenting and not co-parenting with the high conflicts. I have never even heard of that, Carrie. Thank you for sharing that. So it's called parallel parenting, not co-parenting. I mean, that makes sense. That's a great way to put it with high conflict situations. Yeah. So if you want to, we'll put it down in the comments here when we're done. You can just go to joshandchristy.com/PBOD. It's Perfectly Blended One Day, so PBOD, and you can get signed up. Grab your tickets.
Peabod,
but it's not that. It's just Peabod. So joshandchristy.com/Peabod. All right, anything else?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next Tuesday live. Same place, same spot, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Bye.